Hello everyone, welcome back to another Star Wars Destiny video. Today we're doing part 2 of our location breakdown. So we're going to do the final 5 locations from the Awakening set, starting on the Jedi Temple. The claim is look at an opponent's hand and discard up to 2 events of your choice from it. So you get to look at their hand, you take 2 events out of there, and you get a discard them for them. It's pretty good. Could work well in mill decks or just control decks. Be like, oh, you have that event. I know you're gonna play that event next turn. Go ahead and get rid of it. The negative of this location is obviously having it being used against you. So when I pick locations, I try to pick locations that are more beneficial for me, but also if they get claimed against me, don't do a ton of damage. This could potentially maybe mill you out if you only have a couple cards in hand, none in your deck, and they're both events, your hand might get milled out. You might just lose a good event that you were holding on to for the right moment, like a defensive position or a dug in, something like that. But if you do claim it, you probably want to play it in a deck that's fairly fast, so you're always claiming it and you're always getting rid of up to 2 events. Having it being claimed against you could be fairly devastating, especially if it happens over and over again. So that's the Jedi Temple. We're going to move into our next location. All right, we are back with the Rebel War Room. Claim is resolve one of your dice. If it has a resource cost, you do not have to pay it. I've had pretty good success with this location in decks that are running a lot of cards and dice that have resource costs assigned to them. So like stormtroopers and some of their guns, which have a lot of resource costs on them. However, when you claim this, you could only resolve one die without paying the resource cost. So you're not going to be able to resolve, let's say, 2 range damage for a resource and a +1 range. You're only going to be able to resolve the 2 range damage, and the modified dice will just be kind of left over, and you won't be able to do anything with them. However, it's very good in decks that run, especially if you're burning through resources on your turn and you happen to roll something that requires a resource. You can just potentially leave that in your dice pool as long as your opponent doesn't remove it or something. And then when it comes time to claim the battlefield that hasn't been claimed yet, you can claim it and resolve that die. I've also used it. I don't run this location with Kylo and Dooku. I run the Emperor's Throne Room, but I've played on the Rebel War Room with that deck. And Dooku does have the discard face on his dice that requires a resource. So sometimes I've left that out and then have claimed the battlefield, resolving that die, and then have them mill 2 cards. It's also not a huge deal if it gets claimed against you, because a lot of times if people have damage on the board or stuff that they want to use right away, they'll find a way to get that resource before actually claiming the battlefield. So this is just like a nice effect. If you have 0 resources, you leave 1 die out on the board, and then you can claim it, resolve it without paying that resource cost. So that's the Rebel War Room. I really like this, especially in I use it in my Vader Troopers deck, and I've also used it in my Politic and Stormtroopers deck as well, just because of a lot of their dice have a resource cost. I'm not currently using it in the Tusken Raider and Stormtrooper deck, even though it would fit in that deck as well. We're gonna move into our next location. All right, we are back with the Mos Eisley Spaceport. The claim is return one of your upgrades in play to your hand to gain a resource. At first, I didn't really like this card, but the more I've played with it, I'm actually using this location currently in my Tusken Raider and Stormtroopers deck, just because it's a nice way to gain a resource and potentially get to use the upgrade that you returned again. So let's say, or for example, let's say you have a holdout blaster in your hand and a promotion. Let's say you already have a character that has a promotion on it. You can return the promotion, get 1 resource, and then you have 1 resource. At the beginning of the next round, you get 2 more resources, so you'll be able to potentially play your holdout blaster and your promotion in 1 turn, and you don't have to resolve any dice to get resources or anything like that. You also, if you already had a promotion on a character, so you play promotion, you get to draw a card. If you return the promotion to your hand and later play it again, you still get to draw a card once you play it. So it's also a nice way to get rid of, like, let's say DH-17 blasters or 1 resource. You play those early in the game, and later in the game, you get a better upgrade that costs a little bit more. You can return that DH-17 to your hand, get a resource, and then play the more expensive upgrade on top of that. So it's a nice way to just get extra resources, especially if you're running a resource-heavy deck, like if you're running like ATSCs and stuff. I used to run ATSCs in my Politic and Troopers deck, but I wasn't getting them out fast enough, even with this. But there are other ways to get resources. You can combine it with drudge work and things like that to get even more resources. So in my Stormtrooper and Tusken Raider deck, I have Mos Eisley Spaceport. I also have drudge work, logistics, other ways just to get a bunch of resources so I can outfit my Stormtroopers with multiple upgrades and things like that. So this is just a nice way to get one extra resource before you get more resources at the beginning of the next round. At first, I didn't really like this location, but I'm started to kind of like it a little bit more. We're going to move into our next location. Next up, we have the Separatist Base. So each opponent, when you claim it, each opponent chooses and deals one unblockable damage to one of their characters. I've never actually played with a Separatist Base, but I think when Palpatine comes out, I might actually try building a Palpatine deck, like if I'm lucky enough to open 2 Palpatine dice, or Proxy 1 or something like that. But if Palpatine, if the decks I've seen are any indication of like how fast the deck works, because you can roll out stuff, resolve it, and when you resolve Palpatine's dice, he does automatic damage for resolving dice. And if you play fast enough with Palpatine, you can resolve the Separatist Base and deal 1 more unblockable damage. So let's say for the sake of argument, there's no dice removal happening. You roll out let's say 2 Palpatines. You resolve both. You do damage plus any damage that you resolve for. So if you did range damage, you do the range damage plus the damage that comes whenever you resolve one of his dice. And then if you claim, that's 1 extra damage on top of that. So that could add up pretty quickly. I don't think the card is particularly good, at least with just the Awakening set. I think it will get better when there's like more aggressive decks using Spirit of Rebellion stuff. Like when Overkill comes out, that'll combine really well with this. So you roll out a bunch of range damage with characters, weapons, and Overkill, and then you resolve that damage. Even if you do something with Ambush, you can roll out and resolve all at once. And then if you have any more Ambush you can use, you can then take another action and claim the battlefield and do an extra damage. So I think Separatist Base is going to be a stronger card in the next set. We're going to move into our final location. And the final location is the Starship Graveyard. This is exclusive to the Race Starter set. So the claim is, choose a support or upgrade in your discard pile and place it on top of your deck. So right away, if somebody played a disarm on you, discard the weapon, put it in your discard pile. If you claim the Starship Graveyard, you can get that weapon back. It works really well with like the Rey and Han decks, or any decks that are using Second Chance. So any deck that has yellow in it, if you're using like Second Chance with Rey and Han, I've used Second Chance in Padme and Akbar, even though I don't play on the Starship Graveyard. I have the command center for that, for milling, but if I happen to be on the Starship Graveyard, it allows me to use Second Chance multiple times, because if Second Chance goes off, it gets discarded, you then claim the battlefield, and you get Second Chance back on top of your deck. Like I said, if you get disarmed, it's a way to get that weapon back. If you happen to use Scavenge, you discard cards to pull something back. So if you discarded a support or an upgrade card, when you claim the battlefield, you can potentially get some of the cards you discarded back. It's a nice way to essentially recycle your discard pile. So you claim, get a support or upgrade back, and then you can play that on a future turn. And then if somebody makes you discard something, if it's a support or upgrade, you can always just claim and get that support back. Hopefully, it's a nice way to, like I said, cycle stuff in and out of your deck. So you can even discard something to reroll that you're not going to currently play or you don't have the resources for. So let's say you have a DL44 Blaster and you don't have enough resources for it. You could discard it to reroll your dice, resolve them, and do all that. And then when you claim the battlefield, you then get that DL44 Blaster back. And then if you end up getting an extra resource later, you can then play that Blaster, or play the Blaster when you get more resources on your beginning of the next round. So it's just a nice way to do all that kind of stuff. And that's the final location of the Awakening set. That actually completes the Awakening set, so I'm probably going to do some videos focusing on decks I'm running when spoilers come out. I'm not sure if I'm going to do a spoiler on Guard and the new Finn, just because I can't really read what the card says. But we're going to be doing more spoiler videos once more stuff gets announced, deck videos, things like that. So again, I want to thank you for watching. Remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Take care.